The World Bank has recognized the advances of President Bola Tinubu on economic reforms but urged more progress on the medium-term fiscal and monetary measures. The presidency has ended a costly fuel subsidy regime and lifted restrictions on the naira currency to bring in more foreign investments. But in the short term, Nigerians are struggling with high inflation, high fuel prices, and sharply weakened naira. In its report on Nigeria's development updates, the World Bank said reforms have been essential, but there was need to sustain and fully implement. For more perspective on this, I'm being joined this Monday afternoon to start the show, Director Research and Strategy, Chapel Hill, Denham, Mr. Tajuddin Ibrahim. Thank you so much. It's good to have you start the week with us.
Thank you for having me as well.
Yes, in all of this, I want to look at an overview, of course, of this report. But they're saying that there is need to sustain these reforms. And we ought to also get to a point where we start to see results. Take us through what you make of this. It's a large document, but what you make of it and your pointers in all of this and what you think Nigeria needs to hold strong.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show once again. Definitely the report is a large one, but it is one that has the key elements around what the World Bank expects the government to do. To start with, there is recognition of the efforts made by the Tinubu administration around, number one, the removal of, fuel subsidy, and also number two, around the unification, or what I can comfortably call the valuation of the currency to ensure that it is reflective of market forces, which, in this case are, demand and supply. Nevertheless, it is the view of the World Bank that there is still need for Nigeria to do more around, reforms, and also to follow up with some of the, to follow up with the two reforms that, they have embarked upon. We should also bear in mind that, these two key reforms were instrumental to the upgrade of Nigeria's outlook by, Moody's to positive from stable. So my sense is that, that recognition that is given to the current administration, I believe, is remarkable. Nevertheless, the World Bank is of the opinion that Nigeria should, number one, ensure the transparency of their revenue generation channels. And this is where NNPC comes into the picture. When we have removed fuel subsidy, there should be savings and there should be foreign exchange gains to the purse of the government. We currently are seeing foreign exchange gains with respect to the revenue distributed at the federation level. But we are not seeing transparency with respect to inflows to the pocket of the government as far as, crude oil sales are concerned. So that is one area that the World Bank believes that Nigeria, and in particular the NNPC, should be a lot more transparent, should provide clarity, so that the level of confidence in the current administration around the removal of subsidy will be lifted by the public. There will be expectation that they will do something tangible with the subsidy that has been removed. You cannot remove subsidy and then you do not allow Nigerians to see the benefit in terms of how much have you been able to save, in terms of how much are you looking to invest in key infrastructure development to ensure that the cost of living is declining or at least growing at at a much slower pace for Nigerians. That is when Nigerians will feel the positive impact. And this, broadly speaking, is indicative of the inflation level that we currently are seeing in the country. And that is another factor that the World Bank spoke to in their report. They believe inflation at current level is way too high, and there should be something that the government should do to address the high level. The Monetary Policy Authority also has a role to play around addressing inflation. The final element I would like to touch on is around ensuring that subsidy is not reinstated, to ensure that other market players can come into the oil and gas market and import PMS, and also play in the market for us to have a competitive market where consumers eventually benefit from, who is a lot more cost efficient as a player in the industry. I have a view around that. My view is that there is a limit to which the government can allow petrol prices to go. Otherwise, it will be further hardship on Nigeria, and I believe the current administration will be concerned around that. Those are some initial thoughts around the report.
It's really a great way to start. I must thank you so much for your brilliant contributions there. But let's take it a step further. You mentioned something, I'm going to take it from there. Some are saying PMS should be selling as much as 750 naira if we are to follow market principles, dollar rate, and all that we've seen. So some are saying one way or the other, one subsidy is coming somewhere. We don't know where that is coming from. But I agree with you that we need marketers to get into this market, play in this market to make it more opened, benefits of the PIA and all of that. But let me ask you another question. More revenue is coming now to government, both the federal, state, and local governments. They're all getting more money now. Just last week, I think it was like 1 trillion naira that was shared between the 3 tiers of government. What more is expected of them to support the presidency, to support the fiscal side in achieving some of these lofty goals and ideas of government?
I think one area that Nigerians should all look towards is around the NNPC. And I say NNPC just like I said earlier, because that is the entity through which Nigeria generates oil revenue. And if that entity is one key area of revenue generation for us, there should be a lot of transparency around how much are we now making in terms of revenue now that subsidy has been removed. We have not heard much around that. There is little or no clarity around that area. And I believe the NNPC owes Nigeria that transparency. That is number one. Number two is around the inflows of foreign currency to the country through the sale of crude oil. This is still by the NNPC. So we need that clarity. No doubt the government has announced sharing well over 1 trillion, but that doesn't really reflect the level of transparency that Nigerians need. If you look at that 1 trillion revenue that is shared, it has some element of foreign currency gains. The foreign currency gains is just the benefit of naira devaluation. That is just what that implies. What about the revenue that comes in to the purse of the government just because subsidy has been removed? There is little or no clarity around that. So I believe that the NNPC should be a lot more transparent around that. We currently are still complaining about dollar illiquidity in the foreign currency market. That speaks to the ability of the government to generate US dollars as we sell crude oil. So we have not really heard from NNPC around how much dollars are flowing in now that there is no more, subsidy on PMS. So these are some of the areas of concern by the World Bank. And I think it is not only the World Bank that is concerned about this. There are some key Nigerians that have also expressed their views around the need for transparency and improvement in reporting by the NNPC. These are some of the areas that I believe, we should see improvement. And I think, if we do that, every Nigerian will understand where is our money going into, and we can expect some level of investment by the government on the back of, the removal of the subsidy. And I think one area to also touch on is what the state government too can do around increasing their internally generated revenue.
Good.
This is not a time to depend too much on the federal government, but a time to also look at what they can generate in revenue internally.
Indeed. And even the increase in FAC, many expect that Nigerians should get dividends of democracy more than what's been happening before now. In that same report, poverty rate increased slightly, I think from 40 to 46%, depending on the side where you are looking at it from. But I want to ask you, what more would be done? We have initiatives on ground. Government expect to do some cash transfers. We have issues with NIN and the financial inclusion issue of those that don't have accounts. And government will not want to just share money. They want to know who is getting what. What do you think can also be done along that line?
Okay, so let's take a look at it from this standpoint. And I think the question should be, how many Nigerians are going to get, those cash transfers? The answer is very few Nigerians. The second question is, what is the size of the cash transfer? It doesn't look more than like, 35,000 naira or thereabouts. Is that what will cover for the jump in, food prices? The answer is no. Is that what will cover for the devaluation of the currency that we have seen so far? The answer is no. So when those, are responses in the medium to long term, the cost of living for Nigerians, is sort of reduced, or it grows at a much, slower pace. If we talk about transportation is still something that is being provided by each Nigerian. The government is not providing, for us on that front. That is one area they can look at and ensure that, they implement any policy that they have as quickly as possible to ensure that Nigerians can easily and very quickly see the impact in their lives, see the impact on their pockets, see the impact in the cost of living on a daily basis. That is one. The second one is around the availability of power, for instance. We still are in a country where many Nigerians generate their own power using generators. We spend a lot on diesel, we spend a lot on petrol. So if that area, there is an investment in it, a huge one that can sustain low cost of electricity in the medium to long term, then we'll be talking about all those benefits of democracy. But as we speak, I agree that it cannot be fixed in the short term, but let us see some element of action plans. Let us begin to see initial executions of those strategies and plans by the government. Then I believe many Nigerians will be a lot more comfortable that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Indeed, light at the end of the tunnel. Mr. Taj, before I let you go, the reality on ground is inflation is above 27%. Of course, this has its own effect on transport, food prices, and all that we see in the market. Now, what would you say can be, or what is the reality moving forward if we are to look at this fundamentals that we face? What sort of 2024 are we looking at? Let's say the first quarter, second quarter. It doesn't look like inflation will come down anytime soon. Let's wrap up on that note.
I think personally, from our analysis at Chapel Hill, Denham, our sense is that we will be in a disinflation environment in 2024. If we look at the numbers that we have seen so far, inflation at 28.20 for the month of November, it is not surprising to us. It came much in line with our expectation of 28.02. So what I expect next year is disinflation, because this year already we have high base effect. The second element to my mind is that this year, 2023, is a year that we had the removal of fuel subsidy. Next year, there is no such a removal on a huge note. The third element to my mind is that this year is a year that we had the devaluation of the naira by well over 40–50%. Next year, we do not expect such a huge jump in the valuation of the currency. So when we put all these elements together, my sense is that Nigeria will experience much lower inflation rate in 2024. But it is very important, even if inflation moderates, it is important that the income levels of Nigerians improve. It is important that the government works around wage increases where necessary, work around ensuring that Nigerians live better life, particularly on the cost of living on a daily basis. When we begin to see all those elements in the first half, my sense is that many Nigerians will be better positioned to spend. And when we spend, it means we will see economic growth, broadly speaking, in my view.
I must thank you so much, Mr. Tajuddin Ibrahim. Thank you for starting the week with us. Director, Research and Strategy, Chapel Hill, Denham. Thank you. Have a productive week.
Thank you for having me.
Well, coming up